with control coming through there. I'm hoping that you're having a lovely morning so far. I know I am, simply because I'm with you. Simply because I'm waking up with you. And it makes me happy to know that we have made a commitment to wake up together every single Saturday and Sunday from 6 to 9 a.m. How are you doing? How are you feeling? I'm hoping that you're having a lovely day so far. I'm hoping it's kind to you because why not? You know, why not? Why the heck not? I'm looking forward to this weekend. I think it's going to be a lovely weekend. It's going to be a blessed weekend. It's so funny. I got a voice note from my grandmother the other day. And, it's very important as an African to always listen to your family members, especially the elder ones. And I remember her saying, I need to slow down. Like, I need to relax. I need to, take it easy. And I feel like as much as she was speaking to me, I feel like she's probably speaking to a lot of you out there that are just putting in so much work. Like, I think she's trying to say, guys, like, you're just doing too much for your ages. Like, you are doing a lot, and it's okay to just slow down and take time. I mean, she literally asked me, can you just sleep for the whole day? And in my head, I'm like, girl, which day am I going to choose where I have to sleep the entire day? That's almost impossible at this point. But, it was, for me, I don't know. I felt that she was not just speaking to me, but speaking to a lot of young people who are doing amazing things and who are making sure that their lives are, prosperous. I think all of us want a prosperous life. All of us want to, make it in life. We want to make sure that we are the success stories in our families. So we got to put in a little bit of the work. But we also have to listen to them when they say, just relax. But what's so interesting is that when we speak about urban development and inclusive cities, it's we need to talk about, how the cities are evolving. We can't still have the same, cities that we lived in 10, 20 years ago and that we're living in now. Street names are changing. I remember there was a time where one of the main roads in Gauteng was called, I think it's William Nicol, right? But now it's called Winnie Mandela Drive. And the problem is, for me, not that I'm not acknowledging Mama Winnie, she's amazing, shout out to her, but I can't help but keep saying, no, it's on William Nicol. It's on William Nicol, because it is inherently in my system to say that. So how do we also navigate the change management that comes with our cities changing and, the urban cities also evolving? And we need to speak a little bit more about that. Joining us is Vuyo Hlwatika, who's a project officer and a rising voice in the South African's urban development sector. She's the forefront of a community-driven spatial development initiative in Cape Town, working with municipalities, communities, and young people to reimagine just and inclusive urban futures. Vuyokazi, good morning.
Good morning, Ntsako. Wow, what an introduction.
You deserve it. Do you know why you deserve it? Because it is 1 a.m. where you are right now. 1 in the morning.
Yeah.
So you deserve the intro because you put in time to be here. So it's very, very important. For me, I find it very interesting when I speak to an African woman, a black woman within the field of, a field that's not necessarily dominated by us. The people that look like us are not necessarily in that field. What is your experience currently within the urban development space?
So I worked in the urban development space until recently, focusing on land and housing issues in Cape Town.
Mm.
I've recently stepped away from that to pursue an MPA in international development, but my journey into the field, I would say, was more of a scenic route. I started off studying international relations and politics, and my first full-time role was actually corporate. I worked as a researcher in intelligence and risk, but I've always been driven towards development. I didn't know exactly what that would look like, but I did know that I would like to work in development. And so the first role that I got was in urban development. And so that really focused on land issues in Cape Town, housing issues in Cape Town. And within my role, I worked across the city. So I led projects in Bellville South and in Mitchell's Plain. Also worked in Khayelitsha, and we did also have some citywide projects. So a role that that I thoroughly enjoyed. But I do think that if you operate from an ethos of care, it can be a taxing space to be in emotionally, just because of the fact that you see firsthand the effects of apartheid spatial planning on young people, on
Mm.
families, on communities. But I will say that it is also a very hopeful space, and I am seeing more young people getting into the space, more Black people getting into the space. So that's also something that's been really inspiring.
And I find it quite interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring it up just now. The fact that a lot of the, and I'm going to use Commonwealth for context sake, right? A lot of the Commonwealth countries in Africa, you know, a lot of us were kind of, we planned for, you know, the places that we are raised in, the townships that we know today were planned for us, but not by us, right? What are some of the effects of that? Because when even, I remember reading an article about it a couple of years ago, about how even when you look at the escapes within the city, you know, it was not necessarily that easy for you to get out of the city. When you look at the likes of Pretoria, there's a lot of one-way roads. You know, what was kind of the big idea, and how does it affect us, you know, and how navigating the city life? You know, it was planned for us. We were raised in the city, but we don't necessarily know the effects of it psychologically.
Yeah, so in a lot of South African cities, the plan was basically around apartheid, and we still do have a lot of apartheid spatial planning. And so the idea around apartheid was to create cities where only the wealthy and only white people could live in the city center, and everyone else was priced out. So Black, colored, Indian people had to live in the periphery and travel long distances to make it to work. And unfortunately, in the 31 years of democracy that we've had, we've seen those systems being reproduced. We haven't seen really much of inclusive spatial planning. So that was the idea around the cities that we have right now, and the effects of that, how that affects people living in cities is number one, the amount of time that it takes people to travel from work to travel from home to work opportunities. I know in Cape Town, one study said that people in poorer communities, especially, which are mostly Black and colored communities, people spend up to 43% of their salaries just on transport to get to work and back. So if you have people who are spending half of their day on their commute trying to get to work, people who are spending nearly half of their salaries just trying to get to work, then obviously that's not a very sustainable system. It's not an inclusive city. It's not a city that people can enjoy. It's basically creating an environment where people go into the city to work and go back into their neighborhoods just to sleep. Because by the time you get there, you're so tired. You've spent half your day traveling back and forth.
Also, when you look at the properties, you know, the properties that they're developing there in the cities, or right now, currently, you get apartments for like 38 to square meters that are going for like
Yeah.
8 grand because they're just in the
Yeah.
city. So it doesn't sound very inclusive. What are we talking about when we talk about inclusivity within city and urban development?
So inclusivity can include a wide range of things. The most common thing that we're talking about when we talk about inclusivity is we're talking about the price factor. How can people afford to live in the space? So some solutions to this have included things like social housing, which is priced a bit lower, and that's something that more people can afford. But even that comes with its own issues because the communities that we've worked with would say that when social housing is built initially, it's priced low enough for people to afford. But as the years go on, the rent increases and it ends up pricing them out anyway. So it could be things like social housing, could be things like inclusionary zoning. So making sure that if a new development is going up, a certain percentage of the units within that new development should be affordable. So it's a wide range of things, but mostly it centers around pricing and making sure that more people can afford homes closer to the inner city. But yeah, it's quite a challenge to implement.
Because also, I mean, we're not dealing with something that was built, you know, 2 years ago. We're dealing with something that was built almost 200 years ago. So you're
Yes.
not only having to deal with the city itself and having to move buildings like it's a chessboard, but having to deal with, you know, a deeply ingrained, systematic changes. I mean, people know that when they turn left on this street, it's this street, you know, this is where they can find
Yes.
that. So I feel like even the changes change management aspect of urban development is quite an important one, right? Because people, you kind of landmark yourself without even knowing. You know that by that corner, there's Cindy who sells the best kotas. But imagine in your
Yes.
urban development having to change that, what that now looks like. What is the work that you also do with the UCT engineering students? Because I feel like it's important to kind of involve young people, as you said, into this work.
Okay, I think before I get to that, I also just want to talk about the change aspect and to say that the cities we have right now, they're not organic. They were planned, they were designed to be this way. And so, as much as people do struggle sometimes with change and adapting to new things, it's important for us to realize that if it was designed this way and the current way that it's been designed isn't working, then it can also be designed in a way that's more inclusive, in a way that works for more people. Because I have experienced, certain experiences where there seems to be this crisis of imagination around cities and what cities can look like, and this thinking that, because things have been this way for a long time, there's nothing we can really do about it. And I've got a politics background, and one theory that I really enjoyed in international relations was around constructivism and how the system that we work in that way because of the ideas that we have, the beliefs that we have, but we basically construct the system. So I think that applies in this case as well, that look, it was designed this way and this is what we have right now, but it doesn't necessarily have to look like that. And so I think especially working with young people, working with students, that's a great place to start influencing people to start thinking differently about the cities that they live in. So with UCT, the project was it was a social infrastructure course that was offered to engineering and built environment students from UCT. And so the idea there was to take students into different communities within Cape Town. So my group went to Mitchell's Plain, others went to Belleville South, others went to Khayelitsha, so different communities within Cape Town, and to link them with community leaders within those communities. And what happened there is that those leaders would then take the lead of that process and explain to the students what their housing challenges are, as well as some of the things that they've tried to do to solve those challenges. Because I think, especially when it comes to poorer communities, there is sometimes the assumption that people in poorer communities are in the situation that they're in because they're not trying hard enough. So it was quite important for us to, number one, have community leaders from those communities lead the process. And number two, have them emphasize the solutions that they've tried to implement. And that was really there to just get students thinking differently, especially because they're in the engineering faculty and they don't necessarily have that opportunity to have more people-facing work, but to get them to think differently in terms of taking a developmental approach to their work, taking a people-centered approach to their work, and also trying to see where the lens of social justice could fit into the work that they will do one day, once they graduate and go into the workforce.
And life doesn't deal everyone with the fair hand, hey? Like there's some
It
people
doesn't.
that we can't, especially it's something that I really dislike when a black person, kind of makes it. And then now we look at people who are in the townships and then we kind of acute it to, if you don't study, this is where you end up. A very
Exactly.
westernized, very polarized way of thinking. And
Yes.
it's unfair actually because not everyone got the opportunity to beat the system. There's some people who maybe got distinctions but just didn't have the money to go to school. There's some people who went to school but didn't have the money to finish. Then there's some people who went to school and finished but just didn't have the money or didn't have an opportunity to get a job. Because we also know that
Exactly.
it happens on all sorts of levels. Or maybe those who did get a job just can't seem to move forward because of the generational debt that they have to cover. So I think it's one of those unfortunate situations that we find ourselves in as Africans. How is the impact of city and urban development changing that and working on that? Because a lot of people probably think, I mean, if the city is changing, how does that help me with my job? I want to get a job. I want to finish with school. How does that help me?
So I think city planning, spatial planning really has the potential to make sure that people live in better cities and cities where they are closer to economic opportunities. So currently the system that we have where people, if you can't afford it, you basically have to live in the periphery of the city and travel long hours. leave early in the morning, get home very late, spend a lot of your money on transport. So city planning has the opportunity to change that, because what it does is to re-envision what a city looks like right now, to look at what a city looks like right now and re-envision what it could look like, and to think about the different activities that could take place in a city. Where could housing be? Where would the transport be? Where would the green spaces be? And in thinking about those processes, it presents an opportunity to say, look, we clearly have this problem of people being very far away from economic opportunities. What are some of the solutions? Are the solutions bringing economic opportunities closer to where people already live, so in township areas? And if that's the case, then how do you ensure things like safety? Because we know that in our cities, some places are safer than others. But the other solution could also be, how do we bring people closer to economic opportunities? Do we improve our public transport systems so that people who live far away can travel faster, safer, in a more efficient way? Do we try to advocate for more affordable inner city social housing? What does that look like? So I think city planning, although it's not the space where the houses are actually built or where the railroads are built or where certain things happen, it is a space to think about the future and to plan the future. And I think in the planning of the future, I think it's really important that local government, as far as possible, engages communities, because communities are the ones who end up living with the reality of whatever the 5-year plan looks like, whatever the 15-year plan looks like. So I think it's really important to try as far as possible to take a people-centered approach, to take a community-centered approach, because communities are the ones who live the realities of whatever plan was made 5, 10, 15 years ago. So getting their insights and getting their inputs is very important in making sure that eventually we come to build a city that is more inclusive, a city that is more equitable, a city that more people can enjoy.
Vuyo Vuyokazi, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Anywhere that we can find you and your organization, perhaps those who want to maybe even volunteer their time or want to know more about urban and city planning.
So the organization that I worked for is called Development Action Group. It's in Cape Town. You can find the information on LinkedIn. You can find the information on Facebook, on Instagram. But there are also other organizations within the space. There's also an organization called Ntsako Mhlanga, which is also in the same land housing space. And I think in just looking at different organizations within the space, people who are interested in entering this field will also find that different organizations take different approaches, and there isn't a set approach on how to do things. There are different approaches, and you might find that maybe one organization's approach works better for you. So yeah, those are two organizations that you could look into.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a blessed one.
Thank you so much, Ntsako. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. In fact, please get some rest. It's 1 a.m., girl.
I am a student. I will be up for a few more hours.
Oh, Bandla. We are working hard. We're playing hard. We're doing it all, darling. All the best to you. That was a Vuyo Vuyokazi Hlwatika coming through there, who is a project officer and a rising voice in South Africa's urban development sector. 6:46 Central African time. Let's enjoy some music right here on the Oasis.
Start your day right.